Hello, Kansas and Western fans. It's time for episode 37 of the construction of the Kansas and Western HO scale model railroad. For the last 2 weeks, the voters chose to have me continue work on structures again. So we will talk about those as we make our way through a tour of the entire layout as normal. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about a slight modification to the poles. Nothing big, just some selections that have changed, and we'll discuss that at the end. Anyway, starting here at the Royal Gorge route, only thing to work on here primarily is, well, there's a lot to work on, honestly, but ballast-wise, it's about half done, so I can continue work on that. And I did a little research on what it would take to put water in this river, and found out some insane numbers. If I were to do one of those water pours like Woodland Scenics, I found roughly it would take 531 ounces to pour enough water to fill this river, which would be somewhere around $1,500 worth of stuff. So I'm not going to do that because that's a little bit crazy. But I think what I am going to do is use Marklund of Sweden's toilet paper method, and you'll have to look that up. It's pretty neat, but super cheap, and it'll take a lot of work, certainly, but I feel a heck of a lot better about approaching this river at some point down the road now, because the river itself is not terribly level. My layout bench work from this side over to the peninsula drops by about an inch in order to make the helix work. That transition come out of the helix here, that's the only way I can make it work smoothly. So I was concerned about how that was going to pour with everything running downhill in that direction. And so doing that toilet paper method, I think, is going to work just fine because it really doesn't care what the incline is. So feeling a lot better about doing that. Anyway, moving along. Obviously, I have to finish just doing some ground cover. I don't have any ground cover at all. I've experimented with doing some rock here along some erosion control along the edge of the tracks, and it'll have to go on this other side as well. I have to figure out how I want to lay this road out. So quite a bit of work here, which is pretty much all scenery related. But I have my backdrop in place, at least temporarily. That's just going to take it. I got to cut it to fit to get that taped on. But otherwise, there's that. And then I just have to add a whole bunch of trees. But that's what I could work on there. And then moving around to Canon City, I still have to figure out what else I want to do here for Colorado quarries. Probably a lot of aggregate piles as they do custom orders for a lot of landscaping rock and stuff like that. So that's primarily what's going to be. I have to come up with a front end loader or some kind of conveyor for loading these cars beyond this tower here and so on. Anyway, moving on into Canon City, still need to buy some more kits for downtown to finish that out. The station itself is pretty well done. I'll probably add a parking lot on either side, a little bit more fencing, and some more detail work on the station itself. And I still have to finish the rest of this engine house. The reason why this hasn't been finished for so long is there's a detail that needs to be added inside that I've never messed with because it's electronics, but it's that welding effect that I'm sure a lot of you have seen on layouts. It's some kind of LED light and a little chip or whatever I have to install, and that's obviously made me nervous because I've never done that before, but that's why this thing has had no roof for a long time. Is that's the next step, is to get that placed in there. So that'll go on with my electronics work vote if you guys want to see something like that done. Anyway, down here to Portland Cement, and I apologize, I have a little bit of a runny nose, so excuse me for that. Anyway, Portland Cement still needs a paint job, obviously, and a repaint job because we don't like this concrete color, which is just fine. And then I just have to start working on track weathering and ballast and decide what I'm going to do with all this open space, ground covering both sides. And then I have to do some kind of a transition to hide these two portals through the backdrop. I have an idea in mind. Going to require a lot of trees and some scenic work, but we'll see if we can make those portals disappear. All right, we'll wrap around to the other side and we'll come back here to the workbench, talk about the pole for this week. Down here in Pueblo will be the first place where I've got one of my little post-its. I did manage to get a little bit of track work done, just that single spur there. The reason why I didn't get more done is I ran out of caulk. On the days that I work, I can work down here for maybe an hour or two, and I don't want to spend that hour or two running errands. And so when I reach a point where I'm out of supplies, I just stop working on that thing until I have a day off, which is today. So I got some more of that. So I'm hoping this weekend to continue work on the track here, because I have figured out how I want to lay it out. And there'll be more explanation once it's actually laid, but you can generally see how it's going to look here. So several different spurs. I've added an extra spur up here for rail car breakdowns, where they'll cut those up. And then we'll have a 3-track spur back here. I did get those engine house kits in, but I ran out of paint, so I couldn't finish installing those. So I just have a couple of the walls laid back there. This thing will actually go all the way into the corner. It'll be 3 tracks, and I'm trying to reproduce this scene here. And you can see how it's kind of laid out the same this way. I'll have to get another one of these gantry cranes for the other end and figure out some kind of transition. I'm not sure. Still thinking about that. A lot of detail there. I'm kind of making up as I go. Total scratch / kit bash. Not sure. Anyway, I have ideas on how the track is going to be laid, so we'll get back to you on that. Anyway, moving along. Into a little hunter yard here, as it's been for several months now. Just need to start attacking the track weathering and ballast here, and still need to finish this transload dock and this highway bridge here. And then here for King Arroyo, just have to remove this foam. It's just temporarily in place. It's not glued or anything. And then figure out what I'm going to do for a trestled bridge over this creek area. And then we transition over here into Lamar. Structure-wise, probably want to put a couple more smaller things here. Maybe a small office flat up against the wall for Colorado Mills. And then still have to add more details here for Lamar Fertilizer. And then some more details there. Need to add an elevator. Need to add the top of the silo down there for the Lamar Co-op. But also could start work on track weathering and ballast, which that's kind of a common theme for the whole railroad at this point. Since almost all the track is laid, that's the next step for track. All right, moving around to Holly. I worked on this a little bit. I did experiment with moving this kit to the other side of Highway 89, on the other side of what I'm calling a seed distributor. There's just not room. I moved the silo over a little bit, or as much as I could stand to, and putting this old elevator between the seed distributor and the co-op was just going to jam it up too much. So I think what I'm going to do, here's the actual scene, and this is looking from this perspective, so you can get a closer look at what this is. I think what I'm going to do is buy another one of these kits and then cut it down and then turn it 90 degrees and then cut that older style silo, I guess, cut it down to about 1/3 to make this, and then it'll fit behind there and then maybe a little bit on this side. And you can see that's what it looks like there, and that'd be from roughly this perspective. So I do have an idea in place, or in mind, about how to finish out this little scene here, but I'm liking how it's going so far. This is the first one of these elevators I've built, and the only reason I haven't put the distribution pipes on is because this is going to require quite a bit more movement. I did cut out a piece of styrene to serve as a pad so that all this can be glued and I won't have to mess with it again. The one thing I haven't done is, as you can see in this photo, that pad is actually raised off the ground by, looks like at least 4 feet. So I need to raise that up off the ground with some more styrene just to make a little box for it to sit on if I'm going to try to be as accurate as possible. I haven't decided in that regard how close I want to get to the reality, the prototype, but that's what I've come up with so far, and that's pretty close to the layout of this thing. So happy with that. That was kind of fun to build that elevator. I have several more of those to build. Anyway, moving on up here to Holcomb Power Plant. Apparently there's an earthquake in Holcomb, as all this has been torn down, honestly. I started working on the track work here. I've got this these foam risers installed. I finally figured out where they need to go to make this fit. This is going to be an ugly transition because you have the transition for the top of the helix coming up at an angle, and the track is trying to cross over that, so that's going to look really gross until it gets completely done, I'm sure. But I'm not too worried about it. I've made that transition several other places, so it just looks ugly for now. But what I'm trying to resolve here is I want the unloading bay, or whatever you want to call that, near the front of these two spurs. It doesn't make any sense to put it at the end of the spur because then you'd have to unload one car at a time, whereas this way you could push an entire string of cars into the spur, and then as you're pushing them, unload each car. The only issue would be you wouldn't be able to do it for both tracks, and why would you? That wouldn't work anyway. But you could do half a train at a time. And so that's the idea for the layout here. Is a delivery would come from Colorado, which is essentially what the helix is coming from Colorado. Train would pull off onto the siding there, and then it would back into Holcomb Power Plant. It would deposit, it would probably go ahead and back and unload on the interior spur, drop those cars once they're unloaded, and then pull forward. And then, actually, no, we'd have to pull those out of that track. That would be the unloading track. Push those onto the storage track for temporary, and then do the other half of the train there. So that's the idea in mind. The only issue I'm trying to work out is how all this is going to fit to make that happen. So that's why it's in pieces, as I was shifting it around, trying to figure out how to make that fit. So that's the idea with that, and it just requires a little more time and effort. Anyway, moving here to Garden City. I did build one more of these tanks. I have obviously 2 more of those kits to build. I'll buy several others, but if you remember from my last video, I talked about how I have several of these industries that have lots of these vertical tanks. And this other one here in Garden City is the same way. And I've got those other industries in El Dorado, Barton Solvents and BG Products, same thing, lots of those vertical tanks. So I had spoken to Walthers to see if I could just buy the sprues that contain these tank kits that they have. And they went so far as to respond with a question about, what kits were they and what were the part numbers. I sent those back and then heard nothing. So what I did, and what I should have done to begin with, was I talked to John over at Whistle Stop Models and asked him, hey, could you make me several of these tanks that are about this high, this wide, and have these kinds of details? And the next day, he came back with me with printed up examples of what they look like, and they're already done. So those are on the way. I ordered about a dozen, I believe, of a couple different sizes. So he helped me out. Price-wise, I thought it was great because they're already assembled. I just have to paint them. So we'll see how those look. As soon as I get those, we'll do a video on those. But anyway, so that'll resolve my dozens of tanks issues that I need for several businesses, so we'll be looking forward to adding those. Anyway, moving on, I did get a series of tanks done here. These were all from the printing paper mill kit from Walthers. I wasn't going to use that kit after all, so I just used these tanks separately, so at least I could start filling out this scene here for Helena Chemical. Moving around to Charleston Elevator. Nothing new here. Just need to do some structure work in terms of adding details, paint obviously, and track work. Plus I need to buy a couple more kits, get those assembled, and backdrop. And we'll transition around to Wichita Industrial. The one other thing, I mentioned how I was going to work on Pueblo, the Evraz plant this weekend while you guys are voting. The other thing I'm going to finish, hopefully, as you can see this seam here, this is the end of my masonite backdrop that I've got installed for the upper level. I need to get some more materials. I have some, but I need to finish the backdrop for the entire rest of the level. So I'm going to try to do that this weekend. Shouldn't take a whole lot of time. It's just be a question of if I can get it all painted up or not. But you'll find out Monday when I do the poll results to see how much of that I managed to get done. Because we're starting to put a lot of buildings right up against the wall, so I need to make sure that I've accounted for that 1/8 inch of space that still has to be taken up by this masonite, but hopefully I can get that taken care of so I don't have to worry about that anymore. Anyway, moving on. Nothing new here in Wichita Industrial, except for I did do a repaint job on this elevator for Advent Mills. I think it looks a lot better, but I think it's a little bit too dark still. So this is part of the reason why I don't finish a lot of my buildings, because a lot of them still need overall paint jobs, and you don't want to go adding a whole bunch of windows and details if you're still trying to do the primary paint color for the structures themselves. So that's why there's no roof on, there's no windows, there's no roof on those. I'm still trying to figure out what color to make this. So hopefully that explains a lot of the reason why these buildings are unfinished. Anyway, this is better, but I think it needs to be lightened up yet. Let me know what you guys think in the opinions or the comments. Your opinions definitely help in terms of color, because as you know, I'm a little bit colorblind, so definitely need some help on that. Anyway, moving down here to Cargill, I've thrown together, obviously you can see this is a Waller's kit that I've modified considerably, but I am happy with how this is going to look here at the end to try to block off that scene across, because you can see Towanda across there. I want to block that off as much as possible. So I need to buy a couple more of these corrugated silos to help fill in that scene. I just haven't figured out which ones to get yet. But now at least I know how this spur is going to lay. And on top of that, I was able to resolve, what do I do if I get a car stuck in there? Well, I'm going to leave a little gap down there, as you can see at the end of the track, that I can reach through to push a car down or something like that. Because this is as far as I can reach, and I'm 6'3". I just knocked that over. And this is as far as I can reach on this side, so I have to be able to reach on the other side to get to that car. So, but here's an example of why I need to make sure that backdrop is in place, because you can see that fits right up against the wall. So I have to make sure I have enough room left for the track and cars to fit. So got that figured out, happy with that. Just have to finish adding that spur. All right, moving down to the Wichita yard. And if you noticed or remember from my poll results video the last time, I managed to get all these filler ties added. So this all looks a heck of a lot better without all those gaps in the track. All right, we'll move around to the other side of the yard. Yard obviously needs track weathering and ballast. At some point, I need to recut all those silos so they're perfectly level and get a roof put on and a distribution house put on top. All right, down here to the UP side, nothing new here. Just track weathering and ballast. Lots of details, and I've got several of these locomotive servicing kits that these are just the bases. I haven't even painted the bases. So I have 3 of those kits for the 3 different yards. Haven't done any of the work on those, so I can continue to get those developed, because there are obviously a lot more to them than just bases. I need to add sanding towers and fueling points, and I'm probably going to have fuel tanks added at different points in the yards as well. And the silos here for Cargill are going to look kind of like this, but I kind of like this perspective here. I think it's going to, once I add a lot of details, obviously ballast and so on, it's going to be kind of a neat perspective, just looking in that direction. I'll transition over here to Towanda. Need to add probably a couple more houses, start figuring out how I'm going to do this grade crossing with the main street through town. That's what I want it to look like back there. And just more idea development here. And I'll transition into the El Dorado oil field. I still need to build one more of these in HO scale, and then I have one more in N scale that I'm going to add, and that'll be more than enough oil pumps for this small scene. And down here to Mears Fertilizer, you saw my last ops video. That got all taken care of and runs. I just have to do some more scene development with maybe a couple more structures like that one to add. Probably to add an unloading road. This back bay is for trucks, so I'll have to figure out how I'm going to do a road for that. And then transfer over here to the rest of the El Dorado Industrial, Barton Solvents and BG Products. Need to build several more of these unloading stands or loading stands, and some background structures and tanks. And I'll order some more of those custom tanks that Whistle Stop Models is making for me back here. with a lot of piping, obviously. And then here in the other refinery, we have my needs a lot of work coking unit. So this is part of that big gantry crane kit. You can tell it's just stood on end. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. This is what I'm going for. So I thought I'd use that gantry crane for that top boom section. It's supposed to span over both of the tanks, and the tanks slash silos that I used are quite a bit wider than I kind of expected. So if I continue with this, and I haven't decided if I have, I would probably need another one of these booms, so they'd be side by side to kind of represent that derrick there. And then I need to build some kind of a shed or not house, but some kind of structure to simulate that. And then I want to do all the superstructure around it, all these beams that surround the tanks, to build up around there. I think once I build that shed on top, then this will at least look a little bit more similar. But the tanks are a little bit bigger than I would like. Now, this is not like a standard design. If you look on YouTube, or Google, anywhere, they design these things quite a bit different from one refinery to the next. So I'm not too worried that it has to look exactly the same, although it would be nice if it did. But this is what I've got done on it so far. This is my first scratch build ever. I'm not terribly happy with the results, but it's also not done. I think maybe if I continued with the plan, it would look better. But anyway, that's what it is for now. Moving on. Nothing else done here for the refinery. All this other concrete area is yet to be filled with a couple more kits and tanks and so on. So a lot of work to be done here. And then wrapping around here to Union Tank Farm, or Union Tank Car Company. Nothing new done here. However, if I can manage to get those backdrops in, it will really improve the look of this area here. We'll block off part of that window, although I think I'm only going to make the backdrop about 12 inches high here because I still want to preserve some of that window light. But we'll see how that looks. I'm sure it'll be a lot better from where it is now. Okay, so that's the whole layout. Now I mentioned about the pole changes. So what I've done is I decided to remove structures as an option because right now it's gotten to the point where I have all the structures done primarily for each location. In terms of, I figured out where track is going to go. I just have to lay it in the places that it's not laid. I just have to figure out how to arrange certain buildings, add more to existing. So I removed structures from the list, like I removed track laying, because I don't want that to be focus so much, as I want to start to focus on scenes a little bit more in terms of structures. Like if we were to pick the Wichita yard, the main silo or the main elevator needs a lot of work just by itself. So that would be something. And then like the El Dorado Industrial Park, I just need to start doing a lot of details, adding a lot more tanks, adding these unloading towers. So that's why I got rid of that, but still lots of other things to choose from. I've got all the locations broken down here. And then I've added some non-site specific aspects. One other thing I could work on, if it interests you guys, I have several of these maintenance of way kits. I've never built any of these metal kits, so that's something I could do. I have a few rail car kits here that I could add. It would be totally different from what I've been doing in terms of construction. So here's the list of all the different voting options. So as always, you guys can vote this weekend until Sunday night at midnight, U.S. Central Time. And then Monday night, I should be able to do a update video with the poll results and my work plan for carrying those out. So thank you everybody for your participation, your questions and your comments. And there's been a lot of helpful comments. So I encourage you to have you drop your opinions whenever you feel like you have one that can help out. I really appreciate that. And I guess that will be it for today. Everybody have a good weekend. We will see you soon.